Today, I'm going to be talking about peptides, not the kind of peptides you might see in some of the dietary supplement products like collagen peptides, but a deeper look into peptides that fall between dietary supplements and pharma products and have to be prescribed. I'm honored to have Jim Lavalle, who is a clinical pharmacist and one of the world's leaders in peptides, as well as Kris Fishman. Kris Fishman is the CEO of Wells Pharmacy Network, and he's involved in providing peptides for practitioners and patients. Before we get into that, here's some of the news that we'd like to talk about today. Ben Greenfield, one of the great podcasters, recently talked about peptides on his Instagram account and got a lot of play. Abbott, the makers of Pedialyte and other household names in healthcare, has launched what could be a great personalized nutrition device that will measure many biomarkers on the body without intrusion. And finally, Unilever, one of the big CPG companies, has partnered up with a startup microbiome company called HoloBiome, and this partnership could discover new ingredients around the gut-brain axis.
Nutrition Business Today.
Nutrition Business Today. Nutrition Business Today.
The facts, fiction, and future of nutrition with Tom Arts, co-founder of Nutrition Business Journal and managing director of Nutrition Business Advisors. Now here's the creator and host of Nutrition Business Today, Tom Arts.
Ben Greenfield has about 500,000 followers across his platform, and about 8,000 people listen to his podcast every week. On January 13th of this year, Ben made an Instagram post that was all about a particular peptide called BP-157. Along with that Instagram was an entire blog post and an article that was really well written on the background of BP-157, what it is, and how it works. Peptides are somewhat hard to explain, and this article does a great job of explaining it. One of my favorite quotes from that article was when Ben said, "This stuff worked so well for me, it should probably be illegal. It probably will be soon." Well, peptides do fall into an interesting regulatory hurdle, and we'll see how they are handled in the future from a regulatory standpoint. But we know many people that have gotten great results from peptides, and thanks, Ben, for that article. Secondly, Robert Ford, the CEO of Abbott, says it will be like having a window into your body. Abbott is coming out with a wearable device. This could be a great measurement device for athletes and people with diabetes, and really anybody interested in their health. This device was put out by Abbott on the heels of their success with the Freestyle Libre glucose monitor device that many of you might have heard of. All you do is wear this one around your arm with a strap, just like Freestyle, and there's no intrusion into the body, no blood, no pain. If you remember, I think that behavior is the key to making personalized nutrition part of people's everyday life. You have to be able to make it easy for people or they won't do it. And hopefully this device will do exactly that. And finally, the makers of Dove, Vaseline, Ben & Jerry's, Liquid IV, and Ollie Vitamins, a company we know as Unilever, has engaged with a startup company called HoloBiome. Unilever formed a partnership with HoloBiome, and HoloBiome is deep in the weeds of research to find ingredients that target the gut-brain axis, driving towards improving mental health conditions. Unilever will then access these ingredients from this partnership, and they will be able to distribute them across many of their food, beverage, and supplement platforms. The idea here is to help your brain from the inside out. Right now, it looks like this ingredient will likely be a prebiotic in its first introduction, but it could be many other things as the research goes on with HoloBiome. HoloBiome has also been invested in by J&J and Janssen and several other major funding companies. We're now on to my podcast with Jim and Kris.
Nutrition Business Advisors, strategic and capital connections to improve your business. We help our clients by facilitating strategic relationships throughout the industry, conducting custom market research projects, such as the size and the trends of the astaxanthin supplement market, and portfolio analysis, business planning, and competitive landscaping to help prepare your business for a sale or investment. To hear more about our services or get in touch, visit nutritionbusinessadvisors.com. That's nutritionbusinessadvisors.com.
Hello, my name is Tom Arts, and I'm really happy to be here with you today on my podcast, Nutrition Business Today. This is our 9th episode, and we are really excited here in December of 2021 to be interviewing two good friends of mine and experts in their field. We have today Dr. James Lavalle joining us, who is a incredible scientist and pharmacist, but way more than that, he's one of the world's experts in helping people with their health through his knowledge as a clinical nutritionist, a pharmacist, and actually an author. So we have Dr. James Lavalle, I call him Jim, with us today, and from Texas. And we also have Kris Fishman today. Kris is the CEO of the Wells Pharmacy Network and has been a CEO and a leader in the nutrition and the pharmacy, compounding pharmacy space for many years. So we're very happy to have him. As you might recall, we're going to cover what's happening in the nutrition field, but also why this new field that we're going to talk about today around peptides is so exciting from a business perspective. So welcome to both of you, Jim in Texas and Kris in Florida, I believe.
Yes. Yeah. Thanks, Tom.
And as we say in Texas, howdy, partner.
Thanks, Jim. So with you today, because you've got a really deep background in peptides, and most of you know that my podcast is not only about the new science and the trends, but also the business opportunities around peptides. I've been tracking peptides for the last year, and I also personally got interested in peptides around my own health. Recently, I had a bout with COVID earlier this fall and came out of that and called Kris, and he sent me a care package. Thank you very much. And Jim, I called for some advice on how peptides could help me get better, and they actually did. So peptides are a really interesting category. We do not have time to cover the entire gamut of what peptides are about. We probably need several hours to do that. They fall into an interesting place in healthcare because they're sort of not really a supplement or a dietary supplement. They're not really a pharma product, yet they have to be prescribed. Some pharma products are peptides, and we'll learn about that as we go. So with that, Jim, what I'd love to do is start off with the basics, sort of assuming that the listeners here don't really know what peptides are. They might have seen a bottle of kind of protein powder out there on the shelf that says collagen peptides. But could you explain to us sort of, I always like to say that great movie, like a 4-year-old, could you explain to us in really clear terms what a peptide is and why you're excited about it?
I'll start with what they are first because I'm really excited about it. I want to go right to the excitement.
Okay.
So peptides are basically a string of amino acids. So you have amino acids are the building blocks of life, right, for proteins. And so you string together amino acids, and that can create a peptide. When a peptide gets big enough, it becomes a protein. So peptides can be as small as 3 amino acids that are tied together, and then they can get really big. And so simply put, peptides are a string of individual amino acids, and they make up thousands of different chemicals that are in our body that signal our body how to function. So that's a peptide. Now, why am I excited about it?
When you say they're a string of amino acids, that to me sounds like it could be a dietary supplement. But a lot of peptides need to be prescribed. So why are peptides different than a dietary supplement?
Well, the first thing is that if a peptide is studied as a drug, for example, insulin is a peptide, and it goes through drug approval and studies, then it reaches the status of a drug. If you have milk peptides, for example, well, if maybe you've been familiar with milk peptides, they're actually over the counter as a dietary supplement. So what really starts to differentiate the difference between a drug and a dietary supplement first would be application, and then the study of it, and then its regulatory status, right? So there's a lot of different factors that go into deciding if something in this category would be a drug or not. If you are taking a peptide and it's an injectable, by default, it's a drug. You can't buy injectables as dietary supplements. So once something becomes an injectable, it's obviously it's now a drug. And because Tom, you know as much about the Dietary Déchets Act, and you know that, well, that means things that we take by mouth. And so once you go beyond that, then it categorizes it differently. So you could have an injectable form of a peptide, and then you could have an oral form of that same peptide, and it be sold not necessarily, I guess, in a gray area of not really being a dietary supplement, but it's not an injectable and therefore could be sold over the counter.
Got it. Thank you. And then tell me again, and then I want to go back to Kris with this same question, but why are you so excited about this category from your perspective as a practitioner and a clinician and educator in this space?
You know, I think the big thing about peptides is that it is a new horizon for treatment. But a lot of times people struggle. I mean, they try to eat right, diet, they're doing nutrients. You know, we all know the value of nutrients and dietary supplements if they're, you know, the studied nutrients in the correct amounts. And then you can layer drug therapy on top of it. And then you can layer behavioral therapy on top of it. There's all kinds of things that you can put together. And still, there's times where a person's either age or their condition has blunted their ability to become well or to restore what I call homeostasis in the body. So what peptides do, in many cases, your body's supposed to make these peptides in your body to help heal you. But for some reason, you're not making them, or you're not making enough of them. And so what's really interesting is the fact that with peptide therapies, it offers this ability to help the body to signal a reorganization back towards healing again, or back towards releasing a hormone properly again, or back towards getting signaling of the cell membrane back again where energy can be produced, or signaling immune cells to become more effective. So when you think of peptides, they literally have application on all sorts of fronts, on everything from cognition to immune support to weight management to, you know, lean mass to restoring sleep patterns. So when you think of peptides, it's a very big category.
Great. That's a great answer. It's actually probably the clearest answer I've heard, because it took me 6 months to just figure out how to define what a peptide is. I want to come back and ask you for an example of a peptide and how it works on, you know, a particular organ in the body as a signaling device. Maybe I'll pick one that I use called thymosin. But first, I want to give Kris a chance. He's on the business side, and you both work together. But Kris, you run the Wells Pharmacy. You don't just sell peptides. I think you sell a lot of other things, hormones. But tell me your perspective on why you're so excited about peptides before we get into some of the challenges.
So back in 2014, when I started in the pharmacy world, it was really based on hormones. So your traditional testosterone, estrogens, things like that. And you know, we didn't really tell when someone took those, maybe testosterone and some other hormones, but for the most part, it was just sort of a way of life and becoming you know, sort of normalized, right? When we looked into the peptides and saw the technology changes that, you know, I think are well overdue to you know, our current medicine, we started watching people, for example, with stomach aches say, I haven't had a stomach ache, this BPC pill won't work. And you know, you give it a shot and a month later, they say, I haven't felt this good in 20 years. And it's a pill. So for what I'm seeing and listening to the results of what Dr. Lavalle does, I'm seeing the other end saying, I need to talk to my mom and my brother, my sister, my aunt. It's really amazing. And then, you know, from a friends and family point of view, it's something that unfortunately the world doesn't know enough yet of. And stuff like A4M just gets more exciting. And every year we're starting to see traditional doctors come in and say, okay, I wish I knew about this sooner. So it's what we're seeing on our side.
And you mentioned A4M, and not all of my listeners will know what that is. That's the Anti-Aging Medicine Academy that they had their big yearly annual show in Las Vegas last week, first week of December. And I know that you were both there, you exhibiting, Kris, and Jim there holding court, really running the International Peptide Society. So that's why we're so lucky to have you on this podcast. Let's go back to what you were talking about, Jim, around what these peptides do. They're signaling devices for in the body for a particular problem that someone's having with their organ or any part of their body. And so why don't you pick any example you want? I mean, I know that I took something called, I also want to ask you why they all have funny names like 57LL37 APB7 and thymosin, whatever. So that's probably part of the mystery of it. But beyond the name, give us an example of like where you've seen a peptide really work in someone's health and how it worked.
Oh, wow. I've got so many examples. Good example, though. You mentioned BPC-157, or Kris mentioned that. And BPC-157 is called body protection compound. And I've had multiple occasions where people had, say, a surgery or an injury. I know for me on a personal level, when my son got injured and got what was called a Liz Frank injury, and that's where there's a kind of a severing of tendons in the foot. And, it's supposed to take 12 to 18 months to recover from that. He was playing football. And in 5 months, and he had a great surgeon. I mean, so, but in 5 months, he was able to spin on that foot and win the California State Discus Championship, which would be unheard of to create that. So in general, in our facility, when my docs or nurse practitioners are using, utilizing peptides, what we've seen is that people heal dramatically quicker from things like a procedure. Another example would be one called MATA-C. MATS-C, which actually helps blood sugar regulation and helps to burn fat. And what we find with people, and there's a lot of people, 50% of the US population's either got insulin resistance or they're a person with diabetes. Many people are overweight. 42% of the population's obese. Now, I think approaching 80% are overweight. And that's because their body has become inefficient at burning fuel and making energy. And so MATA-C is a compound, a peptide, which helps the insulin receptor to work more efficiently so that your insulin receptor can begin to actually activate, get to the cell membrane, and be more ready to accept the signal, bring in glucose, and then it helps the mitochondria inside the cell, which is your energy producing, basically powerhouse for your cell, to be able to generate energy. And so, I mean, I've seen, my gosh, so many different instances where people were able to see significant difference over what they normally would have seen, either in repair or supporting their metabolism or maybe immunity, getting over, a certain, bug, or just if they have an autoimmune disorder, helping their immune system to become a little more resilient and less fragile, memory, as well. So it's really one of those things where, I think it's a seeing is believing. I came to them rather skeptical, to be honest, but then I also realized that there's a lot of drugs on the market that are peptides.
Got it. Yeah, thank you. I know I saw you at A4M and I've seen you the last few times and you look great. And I think you told me, well, diet, of course, and lifestyle are important, but you said peptides have really helped, and I've seen that with a few people, and I know that again, BPC-157, one of the more popular ones. I've heard great anecdotal stories about that. Kris, just going back to you, and then we'll have one more question for Jim, and then we'll take a break. On the peptide industry, back to the business side, how many peptides are in the market, are being sold? I mean, I'm sure there's the popular ones, but do you know the approximate number?
Well, I can tell you over the last 2 years, we've looked at over about 45 peptides. And again, not all are, there are a few of them that they're being taken away, regulated a little heavier than others.
Why are they being taken away?
So there's as Jim made a comment about the clinical studies and some of the trials, and a lot of these things are rather new, so they're just haven't been out long enough. But from what we see and what we help try to nominate and work with the FDA to show what these are. While we're also starting to see a lot of big pharma businesses coming up and making their own. So you talked about the funny names like PT-141 as an example of a product for libido that started with the company's name or initial with a number that was likely their 141 drug that they developed. So
what peptide is that? I think our listeners around my age will be interested in that. That's called PT-141.
Correct. So for libido, and it was really, what we call the female Viagra. They had it done in a shot format though. So that came a little bit, maybe not so desirable to give yourself a shot before having sex. So, we came up from a compounding point of view and built a nose spray. So just to give an example, that's what the compounders do is we look at the way that something may be provided in the big pharma world, and then we come up with a solution that may be a little bit more desirable and or to fit maybe a different structure. We're not all the same.
Right. So that PT-141 or others, this is back to Jim really, but you can also comment on this, Kris. I mean, is there a movement to try to make a PT-141 pill that you can take orally? Because, then you might piss off, the folks that sell.
Pfizer. Yeah, that's Jim.
Bless you.
But I mean, is that doable from a standpoint of efficacy, Jim, or is that just impossible?
It's interesting. I mean, certainly what's happening now with the interest in peptides, it's perking up dramatically, right? There's now these different innovations in delivery systems. So I think you're going to see more and more peptides be able to be delivered orally because, we're figuring out, maybe they're nanotized or maybe there's a liposphere around them or, there could be different delivery. There could be topical applications for a peptide, for example, in wound healing that could apply as well. And then, of course, there's intranasal as well. I know Kris and Wells make intranasal compounds as well. So I think, pretty much when you start to look at drug therapy or even any type of compound, there's always that thought of, well, how can we deliver it? How can we deliver it so compliance is best? And then, how can we deliver it so that, we get the best efficacy? And so I think initially the thought was, well, there were very few peptides that would be able to work orally. And then we're starting to figure out that there are more peptides that can work by taking a pill.
Great. Thank you, Jim. We're going to take a brief commercial break here, and then we'll come back. And I want to dive a little bit deeper, Jim, into what you learned out of your chairing of the International Peptide Society, which is really a group that's trying to make, the field of peptides really legitimate. You just chaired that event at A4M. And Kris, I want to talk to you about some of the challenges about marketing and selling peptides, and where do you think the future is for peptides? So thank you very much to both of you, and we'll be right back after this commercial break.
NBJ Summit is an exclusive event for C-level executives in the nutrition industry. We're excited to be back for an in-person event this year in Carlsbad, California. Members of the industry will be contacted personally to register for the in-person event, but anyone can join the event virtually. This is a chance to network and collaborate with the influencers shaping our industry. Check out the agenda and register for the event by visiting nbjsummit.com. That's nbjsummit.com.
Okay, we're back on Nutrition Business Today, and my name is Tom Arts, and I'm hosting two experts in the field of peptides, Dr. Jim Lavalle, and Kris Fishman. Kris is the CEO of the Wells Pharmacy Network, one of the providers of peptides, along with compounding pharmacy products. And Jim Lavalle, whose introduction I gave at the beginning, probably didn't do it justice, but he's one of the experts in the field of functional medicine. He's written several books, including Your Blood Never Lies, Cracking the Metabolic Code, and he's one of 9 Americans chosen for the inaugural Dietary Supplement Information Bureau. He's also an expert in peptides, and he just recently got back from Las Vegas, where they have the annual A4M Anti-Aging Academy show, and the Anti-Aging Academy trade show also has a lot of doctors there, and he ran a 3-day, full seminar on peptides. So Jim, just coming off of that, you've had a few days to get back to Texas. What were some of the takeaway thoughts you've had after running this program for all these docs? How many people were in the room, and what were the questions that kept coming up? What did you take away from your experience there?
Well, I mean, first, the American Academy of Anti-Aging Medicine has got over 24,000 members. At the event, there were 3,000 attendees that come to the annual convention, which I think is incredibly exciting. People looking for new innovations in healthcare. And then we had 106 people in our room. And, I want to, give a shout out to everyone. My role at the Peptide Society is to bring doctors together and really allow doctors to share their expertise, both in the steering committee, people that can present case studies. And what's interesting is how enthusiastic doctors are about these results that they're getting that they weren't getting before because they're applying peptides in their patients. So the first thing is the amount of excitement around peptides. It's almost infectious in the room. So, with my background of, writing databases and bringing together experts, that's really, what I feel like my role is not to be the end all be all, but to really bring together different perspectives and along with clinicians of different disciplines that can share their expertise, their knowledge base with how they're applying peptides. So the first thing that I took away was, man, everybody's excited about learning about this new category of tool that they can apply. So, everybody's pretty, pumped up. Secondly, is they're eager to learn and they want to learn the right way to do things. One of the things that we've done at the Peptide Society is we've developed new monographs that give the doctor, when they want to look up a peptide to read about it, it rates the level of clinical trials that are related to that peptide. So it goes from, on a lab bench all the way through an accepted drug. So everything from, in vitro, in vivo, animal studies, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. How much information do we really have on that peptide, right? And I think a lot of the docs really appreciated that. And then we created a forum for them to be able to report case studies, to be able to be featured on education to docs that are involved in the society, as well as to be able to report, because we need to be able to bring in the information as people, see value in this and organize that information so that we can show, the FDA when things are being nominated. Hey, look, we've got doctors that are getting results and here they are. So all of that's really important, as well as tracking an adverse event. You have to know that too. So that was, first of all, just exciting that we had 106 people there. What I really loved was the fact that we had so many doctors that were teaching that all came from a little bit different places and all were giving slightly different perspectives with their use, but all of them really detailed in what they're doing, how they're using peptides to help their patients. I think that was probably the most exciting piece to me. I know there's going to be an evolution in peptides and how they're delivered, whether we're creating them to create more extended release or to create something oral, to create something topical, or to create something intranasal. All of that, of course, as a pharmacologist, that's exciting for me. I like taking things and getting them to be able to absorb better and be utilized and then teach the dosage. So that was great. I think that was the most exciting piece. Obviously, learning about peptides, just seeing the new information that's coming out is always fascinating.
Yeah, did you let's talk about the flip side. I mean, a practitioner needs to be involved from my perspective in peptides. I mean, I've had some peptides and I, had the ability to to be prescribed by a physician, or I call you, but you need to know how to use them correctly. Like you need to know, how to administer them, how to, dosage them. Do they need to be administered in the doctor's office? Can they be done at home? Was that the stuff that you all talked about how do these actually get applied? And is there a danger here? I mean, you said adverse effects. I mean, are peptides, is there a downside if you use them incorrectly?
Well, I mean, the first thing is you can drink too much water and get in trouble. So there's, to say there's no adverse event when you're injecting something or taking a pill or, intranasal. I mean, there's always I think a prudent thought of potential adverse event, and they're reported in the literature. So sometimes people can get, for example, on PT-141 or bremelanotide, some people get a little bit of nausea when they take their shot. Some people may notice a little bit of a headache or a stuffy nose, and they should just know those things. And of course, if a doc's going to prescribe them, they should talk about, hey, this is what you could have happen. You can get irritation at the site of injection. And so the point is some can be done at home, but you're going to be instructed by your doc. And many times docs will want to have you do the first one in the office. And then there are peptides that they may do like ultrasound guided injection where they're dropping, something into an area like a ligament or a joint. And so obviously that's done in the office, right? Nobody's going to be doing that at home. So the majority of the time they're used, people take them at home. They're instructed on how to use them. It's a very small needle. It's what's called an insulin needle or tuberculin needle. So the needle is very tiny.
Insulin is a peptide. I just learned that myself a month ago. So.
Yeah, it's only been out since 1938. So peptides are brand new. It's like they've been around. And I mean, a lot of things that people don't realize. When you see drug commercials, semaglutide, liraglutide, these are drugs that are used to help people with diabetes. Those are peptides.
Ozempic is a new drug.
Yeah, exactly. So, it's one of those things where, and obviously if it's a pill, typically it doesn't have to be given in the office. People are just prescribed it, or they can even buy, peptides as oral supplement and use that. But yeah, I think in general, you should know that there's a potential for side effect on anybody when they take something. We know even when they take a dietary supplement to take it, even though we know it's less risk and usually it's nausea, but sometimes you could have an allergic reaction, right? So we just have to be realistic about making sure people know they should report anything like that could happen.
Got it. Kris, we don't want to let Jim dominate this entire podcast. This is a category that I said earlier is one of the things I write about and talk about is the blur between pharma and supplements and medical foods. And whenever you're in a blurry category and you bump up against pharma, they don't like it.
Right. So from a Wells Pharmacy perspective, what keeps me up at night I hire quality and clinicians that are much smarter than I am. So I really don't worry there, but when it comes to something like peptides, there's a couple, there's some things that are passing and are being allowed to be done. Monographs exist, things like Samoralin or the PT-141 we just discussed. And there's other ones that they may be challenged because there are too many amino acids. They're longer than say 40 amino acids. Therefore, that becomes complex to make in the pharmacy, and they don't want us to do that until further research is done. So those are some of the dynamics with this. Now,
let me repeat what you said, because I think our listeners would really appreciate that. So when you have 40 amino acids or larger strung together, then by definition, the FDA thinks that's over the border of being a drug, correct?
Correct. They classify it as under a biologic. So while that becomes more complex, and I don't disagree that certain pharmacies may struggle doing this or obtaining the right stuff. It takes a lot of time and effort, and surrounding yourselves with physicians that know what they're doing. So from our perspective, Wells, we have to rely on the best, and we continuously learn the same things. This is why we're attending these shows. We're also seeing our physicians doing the products and realizing, wow, it's really helped them personally. I saw a surgeon actually who just has been doing the BPC injection in her shoulders, who said, I wish I knew about this, even though she's prescribed this more to her patients over the last 20 years or so, however many years. But personally, she realized how amazing it was. And it's almost like a light bulb goes on saying, wow, I can't believe how wonderful this is.
So I have to have my shoulder maybe surgery there. If I do that, I should have BP-157. Right?
Absolutely. Yeah. So outside of that, we surrounded ourselves with the A4M, with IPS, with additional companies called APH, that stands for, Alliance for Pharmacy Compounds. And what we did just actually less than 4 weeks ago, we went to Washington, D.C., and we what's called Rush the Capitol Hill. And it's to provide education to our Congress and Senate about what we're doing. When you look at lobbying for big pharma, they're there every day doing what they got to do. But it's I think a breath of fresh air to see some of the new Congress coming in and Senate at a younger age, even realizing that the medicine has changed, and we need to keep up with it. And then just look at global pandemic forced a lot of people to really challenge what they were doing or not doing, and find other things outside of just traditional ways of treating your problems with things like peptides. So we I think it's opening the door for people to understand that there are potentially look at traditional medicine. It's you'll hear kind of an NDC code, National Drug Code, and really what that defines is an insurance company will often cover that particular product under that code. With a compounder, we're taking potentially a few products or different esters or different oils, and we're compounding it to be more towards the size of maybe that person, or adding additional things that are not available in the commercial or retail brand. Therefore, we're able to do these changes, and it's ultimately not an NDC code. We define it as a UFC code, or a universal UPC code, Universal Pharmacy Code. Really, and what that causes is the insurance companies aren't going to pay for that, because it's really it's an unknown. So you may get reimbursement on the product cost, which is not typically what most people will try to do. Peptides in general, depending on your treatment regimen, you're ranging from a couple $100s to maybe a little bit more. So it's affordable.
Good. Well, if I guess Viagra, people pay $10 a pill, but a lot of that's covered by insurance. So
16 pills.
Yeah,
that's it.
Okay, with that, we're going to finish up here, and I'll just have a fun question at the end. What is one of your favorite peptides, both of you, from a commercial aspect, Kris, for you, or even personal? And Jim, I know there's a lot of them out there, but if there's one peptide people should look into, which one do you think is, just absolute people are going to have amazing experience with? And then the last question is, did I forget to ask anything that you want to share about peptides, about the future of peptides, and about where you think the field is going? So, Jim, why don't we go back to you on your favorite peptide and anything else about the future you'd like to share?
Sure. Wow, favorite peptide. I really like ipamorelin, and it's combined with something called CJC 1295. So ipamorelin, it helps you to release your own growth hormone. And me, as an old guy, I make plenty of growth hormone, but I don't release it, and I'm not necessarily into growth hormone replacement, right? Very difficult, a lot of rules and stringency around that. And I've just found that a lot of people, they sleep better, they lean out, their skin looks more youthful, they just feel good. And I like that a lot. Probably fave though, I like Mod SC, man, because I like to work out. I like the mitochondria being charged up, burn fat, I got a family history of diabetes, so I'm always wanting to protect those insulin receptors. So those are probably my two, 1, 2 favorites. But I like them all. No, I really, well, within the right situation or context, I think they have a lot of value. Now, ipamorellin's in combination with another peptide called CJC 1295.
Okay.
One's kind of helping the receptors to be activated so you can release the growth hormone. So you're getting this kind of combination effect when you use the two together for efficiency of both utilization and release. And look, I mean, the immune peptides are fantastic as well. So, we could have a whole show going over each peptide.
Yeah.
Now, the future. I think it's important to understand the difference between getting a prescription for a peptide and buying them online when they say not for human or animal use. There's a lot of variability in quality. There's adulterated product. People shouldn't be buying injectables on their own and injecting them. There's just a lot of issues out there in the market that I think need cleaned up in order to allow the marketplace to move forward. And, I think the future of peptides is bright because you have about 150 peptides that are in different phases of clinical trials through big pharma. So we know that the peptide revolution is coming because there's signal substances that help your body to restore signaling, which allows your body to either heal, repair, or function more efficiently again. It's either as we're aging or because our body is under some sort of, physical or metabolic trauma or inflammation. So that, to me, the future is bright, but we really need to police quality.
Before we forget, and I'll do this at the end, Jim, what is your website, just in case people want to, you don't need to give them your private email address, but how do people reach you?
Yeah, they can go to jimlavalle.com.
Okay. And then Kris, what's the website for Wells Pharmacy?
Yeah, wellsrx.com.
Kris, same question to you. Do you have a favorite peptide?
Yeah, like similar to Jim, it's hard. It's like saying, do I want to have better sleep or maybe fix a stomach ache, right? For me,
You're a PT-141 guy.
yeah. So I would say BPC capsules really, because I've had stomach issues almost all my life, and since I found this product, I stopped really having those problems. And then the second is Thymulin. You mentioned it early. We just were at a show with. We wore masks, right? But still, there were probably 20,000 people running around in tight quarters. So we all came back with sore throats, and so that we felt comfortable and confident that maybe that helps that immune boost, so we're not having to take or obtain something that gets deeper into that. So the future, as Jim stated, I 100% agree. It's us working in combination with the FDA and seeing big pharma doing what they're doing, because at the end of the day, none of us are on this podcast to think, let's just try to make some money. At the end of the day, we're trying to change the way medicine is, and I see us coming into. We sort of stumbled along the way, saying, "Wow, this stuff is actually working," and it because the people keep calling and raving about it. So it's just exciting to see that we may be catching up to maybe our modern era, and we can continue to grow. And who needs to be injured for 12 weeks when we can do it in 5 weeks? If we know that, it just doesn't make any sense why we wouldn't have every PT and surgeon say, "Yeah, let's do this." So education.
Thank you, Kris Fishman, very, very much for those great comments and your time today. I know how valuable both of your time is, and Jim, thank you so much for sharing all this great knowledge, and thanks for your friendship over the years and for getting me out of my own jams. And when I have health challenges, you're such a good healer for everybody. And I'm really excited about peptides and both of you being involved in this. And I agree, there's a peptide revolution, and there's lots of information starting to come out. And if there's anything I can do to help either of you with the revolution of peptides, let me know. I think this is an exciting field for the future. So on behalf of Nutrition Business Today and my producer, Izzy Davis, I'd like to thank you both for your time, and we'll see you. Have a great holiday.
Yeah, same, Tom.
Thank you very much, Tom.
Nutrition Business Today with creator and host Tom Arts. We welcome your feedback. Email us with your comments, questions, and suggestions. nutritionbusinesstoday@gmail.com. And if you like the show, please give us a 5-star rating and don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss a single episode. Nutrition Business Today is produced in collaboration with Navigator Digital Media. And I want to thank our staff at Nutrition Business Advisors, especially Petra Lingenbrink, Maggie Filan, Erica Rommel, and Emma Ring. I'm Izzy Davis. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.